On the 24th of June, 1945, a wounded front paw drags across the wet cobblestones of Red Square. The columns move in step around him, and the dog cannot keep the line. His right forepaw will not carry his weight, so a soldier stoops and gathers him up. By Soviet military record, he is the top mine detection dog of the wartime service. He is an East European Shepherd, credited with more found explosives than almost any other dog in the ranks. The parade honoring victory over Germany is about to explain why he cannot walk it. What follows is the full account, in order, by date and by document. Training. First find, 6 countries, the wound. The confirmed record is kept apart from the story people repeat. One story that follows him wears a marshal's coat. Hold it. First, drop back a decade to a kennel outside Moscow, around 1935. No crowd here. No name yet worth carrying, only a kennel row waiting on the next litter. A litter of East European shepherds is born inside a military breeding program, animals bred not for the show ring, but for work and nerve. Handlers weigh each pup, watch how it follows a scent, and cull for temperament long before the war anyone can smell is named aloud. Soviet trainers had shaped the breed for cold, distance, and obedience under stress, a working animal, not a companion. One puppy in the litter draws the handler's attention early. He is calm where the others startle, steady when a boot scrapes gravel behind him. They mark him, and they set him aside for a program most dogs in the kennel will never enter. But the reason they choose him is not yet written down anywhere in the service ledger. The school sat in the pine country near Moscow. On his first morning, the young shepherd bolted at a rifle crack and never flinched at one again. Here, the Red Army ran the Central School of Military Dog Training, the unit that would put thousands of service dogs into the war. The young shepherd arrived on a lead, one recruit among many hopefuls that season. His handler and instructor was Sergeant Major Alexander Mazover, and the pairing would hold for years. By the second week, he no longer flinched at a raised hand or a dropped tool. Mazover taught the work in small, dry steps, never rushing past one the dog had not yet mastered. A plain leather collar and a short training leash went on him first, the 2 objects that carried every command. Follow the scent line. Freeze at the buried thing. He laid scent trails across cold ground and hid inert charges, practice explosives, harmless, but real to the nose, an inch under the soil. The dog learned to read the earth like a page. A dog that signaled a buried charge and held still saved the hands that would otherwise probe by feel. So the school drilled the same motion until it stopped being a trick and became a reflex. By the summer of 1941, the war was on the western border, and the school's dogs were suddenly needed at the front. But inside the wire, the days stayed the same. Trails, charges, the collar, the leash, the count of clean finds in a logbook. The records from those years show something quiet and hard to miss. On scent trials, he outworked nearly every dog in his cohort. And still, with the trials won, the school had nowhere yet to send him. By 1943, a scent trial was a game. What waited past the school gate was not. In 1943, the front stretched east to west across ground the armies had already torn apart. Every retreating unit before them had left that ground, seeded thick with metal. So the school's best searchers were pulled from the yard and sent forward. Mazover packed the collar and the training leash, and he brought the dog to an engineer unit on the front line. An active minefield does not forgive a mistake. The work itself was simple enough to describe, but lethal for the man who got it wrong. The handler walked a lane, the dog quartered ahead of him on a long lead. Where the nose stopped, a hand had to confirm what the nose had already named. That hand was Mazover's, steady over the marked ground. He knelt in that dirt himself, under fire, and probed each spot the dog marked. Then came a dated engagement and a single find that mattered more than the rest. The dog froze over a patch of churned soil, sat, and would not move. Beneath it lay a buried charge, live, waiting. That find was verified by the engineers, cleared by hand, and written down. A find only counted once it was logged, and the rule was strict about who could log it. Only the handler on the lane could confirm it, his word, not the dog's nose alone. Only after that did an officer log the find in the regimental protocol. One book, every credited action, man or dog, dated in the same hand. No mark, no number. The book made the count real. For the first time, the dog's name entered an official record. Command started asking for him specifically, and inside a week his name would be back in the log a second time. Then the front tore loose and ran west, and the dog went with it, off the map he had learned by heart. The armies moved faster than the sappers could follow, and every field they abandoned stayed seated with iron nobody had time to lift. As the Red Army pushed west, the dog crossed out of Soviet soil into fields already fought over twice. In a flooded Hungarian orchard, he stopped cold at a tree root and sat. Beneath it, a mine the sappers had walked past twice. The mechanism was simple, and it was brutal in its simplicity. A trained nose worked ground by hand's width, and where it stopped, an engineer knelt and lifted. Sergeant Major Mazover walked the lead behind him, marking each stop on a unit sheet, and the count on that sheet climbed week by week. But a proven dog was scarce, and a scarce asset does not stay in one place. Officers began requesting him by name for the jobs their own men dreaded most. The better he worked, the harder the work he was handed, and the denser the fields grew as the front neared the old cities of Europe. Hand clearance carried some of the war's highest engineer casualty rates. One device, one spot no man stepped on. He found those spots one at a time, on paws that were beginning to show the miles. Then an order came down from command, singling him out for a capital still holding its hidden ordnance. It did not yet name which city. Command had named a capital, and in the spring of 1945 the orders came clear. The dog and his handler were sent into Prague, where retreating engineers had wired explosives through the streets. Among his documented assignments was the ground around Prague Castle, a landmark cited in accounts of his service. He worked it the way he worked everything else, nose low, methodical, one buried object at a time. Then the front moved again, and so did he. Accounts place him next near Vienna's great cathedral, clearing mines in the final weeks of the war. 2 ancient capitals cleared in one season, the same push to make liberated cities safe to enter. Few dogs in the service ever saw either city. By now, the men above him had stopped treating his record as ordinary. Engineer command structures began citing his tally the way they cited a proven instrument, and they had reason to. Across the whole Soviet mine detection dog program, handlers and their dogs worked in the thousands. Together, they were credited with finding several million explosive devices during the war. That is more people than lived in wartime Prague, each one a spot no soldier stepped on. Set his own count against that total, and it is one dog's share, and still the largest single share the records name. But that share was documented, and documented work is what command trusts. This was the height of his professional standing, and the paperwork proves it. Officers requested him by name. When the service wanted proof the program worked, it pointed to his file. Then a routine clearance pass, late in those final weeks, went wrong in a way the unit log records only briefly. The unit log records the moment in a single line, the way it records everything. On a clearance pass in the final weeks of the war, the dog was wounded. Not a scrape, a mine blast. The injury took a front paw, deep enough to change how he stood, deep enough that recovery would never give the leg back whole. His handler, the sergeant who had trained him from a puppy, carried him back himself. At the field veterinary station, the wound was cleaned and set. It healed short. The paw met the earth wrong now, and the hitch in his step stayed for life. That is the plain fact, and the record does not soften it. What the record does next is harder to read now. He was not retired. After the paw held weight again, he was returned to active duty and sent back to the same work that had cut him. A proven nose was too scarce to pension off, and the war was not finished with him. A dog that could find what men could not was kept finding until the war stopped needing him. So the handler led him back out, slower now, onto ground still fought over, the choice unweighed, the work unchanged. Every charge was one object, one animal, one chance to get it right. Hand clearance work with the war's harshest odds. Then orders came down the line. Surviving mine detection dogs were being assigned to a formal ceremony in Moscow, and his unit was on the list. But how do you march a dog that can no longer march the distance to Moscow? On June 24, 1945, the orders came true, and the mine dog was brought onto Red Square for the victory parade. The wounded paw could not carry him the length of the march, so he did not walk it. The story most often told is the grandest one. A handler carried him past the reviewing stand on a coat that belonged to Stalin himself. But that detail is not confirmed by primary wartime documents. It is repeated far more often than it is proven, and honesty requires it be named as legend, not record. The record holds a number. Citations credit him with roughly 7,400 mines and shells found. 7,000 objects, each found one at a time by one nose in ground already fought over. That is the seal on his file, and it does not need softening. Go back now to that first frame, the paw dragging across the cobblestones while the crowd stood silent. He could not walk the parade because he had already walked 6 countries to reach it. The wound was the receipt. The collar and leash from his training were set down beside him afterward, apart from the dog. Tools laid down when the work is finished. Nothing more written after that. What happened to him after the parade is not in any accessible record. His story ends, publicly, on this square. Was returning a wounded dog to duty the right call, or the cruel one? That's the record, in order. What you make of it is yours.